The lamb's skull murmurs to itself, "If we had fangs and claws, you wouldn't be locked in here now." "Enough," he musters in a moldered voice from the depths of his corroded throat. "The sky is but an abyss darker than a prison. You and I are nothing more than slaves to a distant dream." In Amphoreus, after solving all 16 puzzles of the Golden Scapegoat game, you'll be given a missive called Golden Scapegoat's Mutterings, which told us that the Golden Scapegoat are nothing more than slaves to a distant dream. But who is a Golden Scapegoat, and what does that have anything to do with the Chrysos heirs and the plot of the main quest? Who is telling the truth? Who is telling the lie? What is Cyrene's plan? And is the Tripartite Prophecy as clear as Trinan claimed it to be? To answer these questions and discern the overarching plot, first we must take a look at what 3.0 has told us so far about the state of Amphoreus. At the beginning, the story started at the end, when Phaenon was not yet Phaenon. Yes, that was a fake name. Not Phaenon was at Elydichna Elysia, which he claimed to be the comforting homeland he would separate a part of his soul from his body to fly back to if he could do so. In Elydichna Elysia, he seemed to be the younger charge of the girl called Cyrene, who is totally an Elysia XP. On her part, Cyrene seemed to entertain the not Phaenon by playing cards with him and telling him stories about his future as a deliverer outside of the village. Not Phaenon was not amused at the prospect, so Cyrene tried to distract him by brushing the story of the future off and telling him to play with the fairies that sound suspiciously like Time passed, and as pre-written by Cyrene, Elydichna Elysia seemed to have been attacked by the black tides. Cyrene was slashed by someone, probably Phaenon, if the Elysian realm parallel holds true. According to Not Phaenon's memories, Cyrene once said, "May this world never have need for a deliverer." Of course, mysteriously, no one has ever found any information about Elydichna Elysia. Well, that's not suspicious at all. After the reported destruction of Elydichna Elysia, Not Phaenon wandered around Amphoreus aimlessly without a name, until one day, he was recruited by Eileithyia and Tribi for the sake of fulfilling a prophecy. According to the version of the prophecy told to us by Eileithyia in the bath, before everything began, the world was in chaos. 3 gods conceived space, time, and laws, laying down the cornerstones of life for all beings. 3 more gods formed the skies, the earth, and the ocean, creating a nursery for the seedlings of life to mature. Kephael, the Atlas Prometheus guy, created humans from golden blood. The wise Circe's reason titan gave humans reasons by giving them fruits. The Nestia romance titan gave them a sense of beauty and love. With that, the first humans were born. In this fleeting golden age, all forms of life thrived and civilizations sprouted one after the other. Disasters and suffering were unheard of in this world. Landforms did not erode with time, nor did humans age or die. But then, the Fire Nation attacked. 3 calamities fell upon the world: trickery, strife, and death. Their descent burst open the short period of prosperity, as though it were nothing more than a dewdrop. A black tide swallowed the world whole, inundating it in blood. Fear permeated every corner of the world like a plague, inebriating mankind far more easily than ambrosia would. Mortals took up arms against one another, waging war in the name of the gods, marking the beginning of a tumultuous age. The wrath of the gods enveloped the earth and hid the firmament in shadows, ensnaring every living being. The divine war only led to one outcome: a shattered world on its death march toward destruction. But then, a prophecy appeared on Amphoreus. Something no one saw coming. The Tripartite Prophecy says there is only one way to stop this war. Assemble a band of heroes powerful enough to take on the 12 titans and reignite their core flames. Only then will their divine wrath abate and peace return to the world. We know this band of heroes by a certain name. Any guesses? That's right, the Chrysos heirs. In addition, according to Eileithyia and Tribi's private talk, Eileithyia and Tribi would eventually step off the stage and leave the fate of Amphoreus in the hands of others, and it was, in fact, Tribi who received the Tripartite Prophecy. On Eileithyia's part, she has been spreading this prophecy across Amphoreus, while keeping the information that Amphoreus was under a firmament classified. With the draw of the prophecy, Eileithyia has managed to collect 6 out of 12 core flames in her cast, and not Phanon was one of them. As the inheritors of the core flames, the Chrysos heirs are also called flame chasers, and each of them received a flaw with their core flame. For Eileithyia, it was her slow loss of humanity as she resembled the divine more and more. For Tribi, her flaw was probably being scattered across space into many different Tribi. For Maidiamos, he couldn't die at all. For Castoris, she got the hands of death, killing everything she touched. But Phanon was the Chrysos heir without flaw, the perfect vessel for divinity, she said. On not Phanon's part, rejuvenated by the new mission life supposedly gave him, he named himself Phanon, which incidentally is actually White Calamity in Chinese. With a sword in hand, the man will inscribe an eternal mark in the Chrysos epic, yet he had lost himself at the beginning of the story. According to Phanon, the Chrysos heirs are meant to shoulder the pillars of the sky in place of the old Titans, which is actually a reference to Heracles promising to shoulder the sky to Atlas in the Garden of Hesperides, as many of my old viewers are familiar with when I talked about the topic back in 2.6. Of course, in the real-life myth, Heracles never did shoulder the sky. He either rolled a rock to do it, or he only tricked Atlas for a moment to get at the golden apple, which actually is also in the game, just that the tree is rotten now and out of fruit. And at this point, like Heracles' trick against Atlas, and like the rotten golden apple in the Garden of Hesperides in the actual game, after doing the Nikata quest, we could easily see that this prophecy is, in fact, a bold-faced lie. For one, from Nikata's quest, we learned directly from the Titan that they had been fighting the Black Tides all this time before the humans at Kremnos decided to split them into 5 and drove them mad with the effect of the Black Tides. As such, it was not the 3 Titans of Calamity, Thanatos, Nikatar, and Zagreus that brought about the Black Tides. In fact, according to the Golden Amphoreus trailer, we already knew that Kephael created all of the Titans, including Thanatos, Nikatar, and Zagreus, while the Black Tides came way later after the sun died. In other words, the 3 Titans of Calamity are nothing but scapegoats in the bogus prophecy. In fact, from the Golden Scapegoat game and the Nameless Faces Japanese MV, we already knew what the Black Tides actually are. It's nothing more than the Nihility, the sea of quanta that eats away at the imaginary tree of Amphoreus, generating Synthurstus as a side effect of its consumption of souls. As for why the Nihility is the sea of quanta, what Nihility actually is in the game, and what Synthurstus are, please check the 9 video for more details. Problem 2, if you think about it carefully, you can see that the prophecy conflicts with itself. Phanon told us that the Chrysos heirs are supposed to shoulder the sky after the Titans died, but at the same time, Eileithyia and Tribi believed that they would step off the stage in the future. So which is it? The Chrysos heirs taking on the responsibility as rulers of Amphoreus and guides for humanity, or Eileithyia and Tribi stepping off the stage and finally die? The prophecy itself has some problems, but at the same time, we can also kind of guess that the version of the prophecy Eileithyia and Tribi told us and Phanon isn't the original version that they heard either. Problem 3. There's actually a readable in-game telling us point-blank that the prophecy is fake. From Destiny Weaver's missives, we were told that originally, the holy maidens of the Temple of 3 Fates sensed some disturbances in the vortex of Genesis. The sky was no longer bound by the principles of Talanton. The Oakman Fate Compass has, too, gone haywire, its pointers spinning wildly as though manipulated by an unseen hand. Even worse, the Thief Star is appearing with increasing frequency. According to ancient prophecies, this signals that Zagreus' schemes are currently taking effect, but I have a feeling that there's more to it than meets the eye. The paths of the Thief Star hide a chaotic pattern we've never seen before. The core flame of Janus is also acting up. As night falls, the gate of infinity resonates with an eerie sound, as if another world is knocking at our door. Keep in mind that the Titans in Amphoreus actually correlate to the Aeons in the wider Honkai Star Rail setting. Presumably made in the Aeon's image by Fuli, whom Oronix called Sky Father, the same title that was used for Kephael, The divine mecha titans in Janusopolis journeyman astrology and in NPC's interactions are pretty blatantly connected to Aeons, even if we don't know exactly how they correlate and for what purpose. For example, Circes is obviously made after Nous, Fagusa is very obviously made after Ouroboros, Georios is very obviously made after Clippeth, and Zagreus is very obviously made after Aha. So when Thief Star is appearing with increasing frequency, according to ancient prophecies, this signals that Zagreus schemes are currently taking effect. That means Aha is knocking at Amphoreus' door, which, incidentally, directly connects this plot to Sparkle's claim way back in Anniversary that she was the divine mecha that wrote the script of the eternal land Amphoreus during the Ionic Age. In other words, the force the Holy Maidens felt was knocking at their door was Sparkle in the role of Zagreus, interfering with the fate of Amphoreus by crafting the script of the Ionic Age, the Tripartite Prophecy that they all have been taken as the truth. In a sense, it's not too dissimilar to the Honkai 3 collab, where Sparkle also knocked on the proverbial door of the Honkai 3 world, and she was likely not joking when she said Amphoreus was her immersive theater play. As such, with Sparkle's intervention in mind, it's no surprise that this is what was written at the end of Destiny Weaver's missives. When the veil of eternal night is rent asunder, when the scales of justice lose their balance, when the gate of infinity is eroded by the black tide, redacted shall make their appearance in the world. Do not trust the core flame you behold, nor believe the prophecies that you've been told. For fate has been altered, and the truth has long been. Remember, the end of the world we fear may herald the dawn of a new start, but the cost is... The veil of eternal night is rent asunder, so even Oronix isn't aware that it's all a scam. The gate of infinity is eroded by the black tide, so what Tribi, the Chrysos heir of Janus, saw was nothing more than Sparkle's script. The core flame is bait. Fate has been altered by Sparkle. The end of the world is the dawn of a new start, but it comes at a redacted cost. Very severe redacted cost that probably involves Nanook and Phaenon's spiritual Atom Tang plan that has been hinted at since Penacony. Trinan stated that the prophecy is clear and bright, but the specific Tribi that said this is blind. And if you have found all the nymphs and completed the related hidden quests, then you'll get 4 tablets that spell out, the sun has never risen. So, what is the truth? Why has the sun never risen? How did Cyrene know the future? And what does that have to do with Nanook, Golden Scapegoat Phaenon, and his spiritual Atom Tang plan? The truth is actually in the far distant past, the original world where Amphoreus as a memory originated from. Elydichna. What is Elydichna? Long story short, Elydichna was the star zone where the swarm first started out. Back during Swarm, a large chunk of Elydichna, including Mandalin Islands and Zeus Tehitra, was under the rule of the Eileithyia Empire, which was founded by the ankle guy under the influence of a prophecy he received from the finality. Of course, unbeknownst to him, the prophecy was fake and tampered by Aha. After Tazi ascended on the Mandalin Island, Eileithyia and the rest of Elydichna were overrun by the swarm. Under the rule of the ankle guy, who was the king with the white crown, Eileithyia tried to mount a counterattack, but it was all in vain. All of Eileithyia were decimated by the swarm, with the remaining survivors falling into nihility and becoming Synthurstus. The White Crown King, having turned into a self-annihilator himself after twisting his ankles, wandered the decimated land of Eileithyia and did a bit of an Ikari Shinji impression. Unfortunately for him, Aha decided to troll him once more, and a masked fool, who was probably Sparkle, stole his memories, which led to him being split in halves. The antiparticle half became a Synthurstu, a shadow of nihility, wandering the land aimlessly, while the particle half forgot that he was a self-annihilator and became a nameless on the gondola Astral Express. However, he could not forget his memories forever, and as the gondola was manipulated by Aha to arrive at Elydichna, the particle half of the ankle guy regained his memories from the masked fool who originally stole it. In the end, he remembered himself as a self-annihilator. The particle and the antiparticle half met in a creation-annihilation reaction under the equilibrium, and the next thing we know, the ankle guy had been reborn on Adlavan as a screaming dark-skinned baby, thrown off the imaginary tree by Aha. For more information on the ankle guy and how the creation annihilation reaction is relevant to Honkai Star Rail world building, you guys can check out the Phanon video I made back in 2.7 and the New 9 video for more details. And yes, Phanon is ankle guy is Nanook. The astute has probably noticed by now that the story of Elydichna and the story of the white-crowned king ankle guy wandering around as a Synthirstu, a shadow of nihility, are basically the plot of the Golden Scapegoat's Murmurs and Phanon's story after Eileithyia Elysia was destroyed, specifically the part where Phanon lost his name after the destruction of Elysia. This is further reinforced by the recently released Japanese MV of the Nameless Faces trailer, which made it rather obvious, with the whole sea of Quantus Synthirstus climbing up the imaginary tree of Amphoreus and Phanon's hands directly paralleling those of the Synthirstus. Really. After all, Synthirstus are all dead people, straying away from their paths, doomed to repeat what they have done in life, not understanding that they have died, doomed to repeat endlessly until they're entirely swallowed by the nihility. I have explained it in more details in the Phanon video and the 9 video, so if you're interested in the topic, you can check that out. And, well, Elydichna.
Elydichna.
Sounding suspiciously a lot like Eileithyia, an alternate name of Elysia, is pretty on the nose. So, what's going on here? Elydichna Elysia is dead, but why is Amphoreus alive? Lore-wise, the answer is rather simple, as it has already been given to us indirectly by Oronix when Fuli gazed at us. According to Oronix, Fuli is the Sky Father, which is supposedly the name of Kephael, the titan that initially created humans with golden blood in Aglaea's story and in Golden Amphoreus trailer. In effect, Amphoreus is nothing more than a memory of Elydichna, an AU fanfic of Elydichna written after its destruction in reality. Of course, the allegory of the cave, which was also referenced by the world building of Enkanomiya and Genshin, is rather suggestive of that. Piecing together all the drips we have gotten so far, the story is likely something like this. Once upon a time, Elydichna followed Aina, with Aina acting as their son. However, during the swarm, Eileithyia and Elydichna became ground zero for the swarm, and Aina sacrificed themselves to stop Tazi. Consequently, all the worlds that used to follow Aina now lost their sons. To balance this out, the equilibrium went around ascending people into eons to become the replacement sons for these worlds, which led to the ascension of Yaoshur and Zype. However, at the same time, Aina's power was divided into many different pieces. Clippeth got a chunk of 1,000 suns to conduct the alchemical transformation on Tazi. Aha also got a few pieces, and now it seems like Fuli got a few pieces as well. At the same time, for Amphoreus specifically, because the entire place was thoroughly destroyed by the swarm, Fuli, the Sky Father in Oronix's words, or someone in the service of Fuli, had to use a combination of the remembrance path, as in, the memories of Elydichna stored in the Sea of Memories, and the remnants of Aina's power, the Dawn Device, the artificial son of Amphoreus, to rebuild Amphoreus. With the remembrance, Synthirstus and bygone memories return to life as mimetic life forms, or in Enkanomiya's phrasing, shades in the Greek underworld, a storybook simulation of the previous era, not knowing that they had already died. To rule over the shades, Fuli created the 13 Titans, yes, 13 not 12, each tasked with a job emulating the functions of the eons outside of Amphoreus. Georios took on Clippeth, Fagusa took on Ouroboros, Circes took on Nous, Kephael took on Aina the Dawn Device, Nikator took on Nanook, Oronix took on Finality, Janus took on Enigmata, Nestia took on Adryla, Thanatos took on 9, and Zagreus took on Aha. Hence, the sun has never risen, according to the tablets you receive after completing the nymph quests. Aina has never returned, and they have all lived in a cave under the artificial light of the Dawn Device. Incidentally, there's even a simulated Dongfang Qixing. However, this is when things went wrong for Amphoreus for unknown reason. Aha or Sparkle found out about Amphoreus and thought it would be funny to mess up Amphoreus's fate. Through Zagreus, Sparkle wrote up a script for the immersive theater play we are currently in, The Black Tides, the corruption of the Sea of Nihility, descended once more, giving back memories to these shades and reminding them that they're nothing more than Synthirsters. At the same time, Like what Aha had done to the ankle guys and Elydichna during Swarm, Sparkle thought it would be funny to give Phanon and Amphoreus a false prophecy. When the veil of eternal night is rent asunder, when the scales of justice lose their balance, when the gate of infinity is eroded by the black tide, redacted shall make their appearance in the world. Do not trust the core flame you behold, nor believe the prophecies that you've been told. For fate has been altered, and the truth has long been, remember, the end of the world we fear may herald the dawn of a new start, but the cost is... Of course, this is only a speculation based on limited information for now, so I don't expect that all of these will be correct, but that should be the general gist of the Amphoreus backstory, basically. In a way, I personally think it's not too different from the current plot with Mars and Honkai 3, just mixed quite a bit with Enkanomiya and Genshin. But going back to the start, what is actually the goal of Fuli here? And what is the goal of Aha in playing with the dice called Amphoreus? I believe that the answer lies in Nanook, for this world was likely created for the sake of Nanook. Going back to Nikator's fight, do you remember when Nikator split himself into 5, one of which became Nous, the reason of Nikator? Because Oronix can't actually change the past, what happened in the quest is that Nous the reason of Nikator finally merged with Nikator of the present, changing the present but still preserving the past. Thus, with Nina sacrificed to himself, he gave the present Chrysos heirs a chance to kill God and replace him as the new Titan of Strife. And doesn't that sound a bit familiar to you? Too many people die too late, yet some die too soon. The Lamb says that death is a major affair as worthy of import as the most grandiose festival. Festivals won't just happen once, but death cannot be rewound. But you have already stepped on the altar countless times. I am the assistant priest killer after all, so I know it well. That wasn't me. Seriously, it wasn't. Don't pretend to be so relaxed. You're right. Sorry. To deliver the firelight, we sinners killed ourselves every time. In other words, Nikator here is a parallel of Nanook Phanon story. As Ankle Guy split into particle Nameless and antiparticle Synthirster, Nikator, too, split into the Mad Titan and his reason. It was clearly no coincidence that Nikator was the Titan of Strife, the Amphoreus equivalent of Nanook's destruction. We knew that when antiparticle Ankle Guy and particle Ankle Guy met, they underwent a creation and annihilation reaction, which led to the birth of Nanook. But under the guidance of equilibrium, when one particle is born, another antiparticle also exists, albeit stuck inside the event horizon of the black hole, which, in this case, is the Sea of Memories. Nous, the antiparticle, was stuck in the past, only for him to escape the past and reunite with his particle self, Nikator, once more. So if Nanook is the particle that escaped out of the Sea of Memories and ascended to become an Aeons, then the antiparticle, the Synthirster wandering Elydichna all along in the Sea of Memories, is nothing more than Phanon, the golden scapegoat we must sacrifice to Nanook to defeat Nanook. The waterfall bleeds the mountains, like a lamb's throat being slit. This world's evils rest on all the sin the traveler will and have committed. Thus, it will begin and end with the original sin. We brought light to the world. We brought destruction to the world. He is alone, yet murmuring to no one. The two gods brush past each other by the shoulder along the bridge. He imagines such a scene. One is the blinding light that rises from infinite void, and the other is blackened blood coursing along parched earth. One dons a flaming crown while prostrating, and the other weeping tears of sulfur amidst hymns. The sinner and the lamb are like two shredded pieces of paper, torn apart by dreams of day, bound together in blood by dark of night, destroyed before it all begins, living in shame after it all ends. Letters have long been etched into eternity, that fate was, is, and will be written by the sinner's own sword, dipped in blood ink. The one who carries out the sacrifice is also part of the sacrificial offering. They all no longer have faces. They all no longer have names. As a Greek god, Eileithyia is a goddess of childbirth. She is the midwife assisting the divine heroes to be born, but at the same time, she is also the daughter of Hera, sent to prevent the birth of Apollo and Heracles. You know, Apollo the sun god, which Amphoreus is supposed to recreate, and Heracles the hero, who is supposed to free Prometheus and Atlas for real in Prometheus Unbound? So, why does Cyrene know the whole story before it began here? Because she is the goddess of childbirth Eileithyia and Amphoreus, the 13th titan meant to watch over the story of the antiparticle Nanook. Just as Eileithyia was sent by Hera to prevent the birth of Apollo and Heracles, Cyrene is here, too, to prevent the birth of the new son Apollo, the samsarending Demogorgon, the deliverer Nanook. Phaenon is fated to become golden scapegoat that would forever be offered up to Nanook, trapping both of them in the cage of Amphoreus. The tang that is meant to lead to a new dawn and the creation of the new sun god has always been missing the 13th titan, who scattered herself across Amphoreus and ran away from the story with the help of the memo keepers, forcing it into an eternal cycle. Hence, according to the golden scapegoat, the sky is but an abyss darker than a prison. You and I are nothing more than slaves to a distant dream. At this point, you can say that Amphoreus is nothing more than an incubator, a big simulated universe for the Aeon's Mamoreal Nanook Raising Project, albeit one that baby anti-Nanook was never supposed to be born from, if Fuli has any say about it. However, that doesn't mean that it's impossible for Phaenon to break free from the cage. If he successfully manages to include Cyrene March in the spiritual atom this time, then it means that Amphoreus will meld away into a sea of red memories to create a new god, the hope Elpis locked at the bottom of Pandora's amphora, the deliverer, a new anti-Nanook to change the meaning of the present Nanook, all in accordance to Aha's plan. At the same time, if the writers want to push for the ending where a new dawn is created for the Elysian realm and Amphoreus' existence is preserved, that means that Phaenon, the Demogorgon fated to kill gods, the Heracles fated to free Prometheus and Atlas from their punishment, the Achilles fated to die with his broken ankles, must be defeated, and his spiritual atom must be foiled. This way, the current Nanook that represents the heat death will stay the calamitous heat death Nanook outside of Pandora's amphora, undisturbed by the memories of the antiparticle Phaenon at the bottom of the amphora, just as Fuli has planned. And wherein lies the cost of the new dawn? The birth of Nanook, the heat death of the universe, as the lost memories are inevitably returned to the self-annihilator. An easy way to visualize this would be to explain it with the laws of thermodynamics, as with most things in life. In real life, there are 4 laws of thermodynamics, and all of them were used in Honkai Star Rail world building, but for the purpose of this video, the 2 relevant laws are the second and the third. The second law of thermodynamics states that in a closed system that has not achieved thermodynamic equilibrium, entropy will increase, and things will become more disordered over time. Back then, when people thought that the universe is a closed system, it was commonly believed that as a result of the increase in entropy, the universe will expand until it reaches the thermodynamic equilibrium, a state in which entropy is at maximum and returns to zero again, as every particle will be too far away from each other to interact anymore. As a result, the temperature of the universe would asymptote to Kevin zero. In short, as entropy increases, entropy will reach maximum and return to zero. This is called the Kevin's paradox, named after Lord Kevin of the Kevin degree fame. Get it? Kevin zero as temperature returns to zero, and Nanook is the heat death, while Phaenon Kevin is the Kevin's paradox. And of course, the second law of thermodynamic, the entropy toward disorder, would be the one to create heat death Nanook during swarm, while at the same time, would also be opposing the Kevin's paradox that forces the universe entropy to return to order, to zero. In other words, after the creation of Nanook, the increase of entropy, it is now in Aha's benefit to prevent Nanook's rise, so the universe would become more and more disordered forever instead of returning to zero. Meanwhile, as Fuli represents the third law of thermodynamics, which stated that the entropy of pure crystals or ice memories, in this case, approaches zero when temperature approaches zero, it is natural for Fuli to support the heat death of absolute zero that the current Nanook stands for, because Fuli believes that the best way to preserve the universe is through the frozen memories of the past, forever kept in the absolute zero. Very long story on that one, and I'll be addressing it in more detail in the respective Aha and Fuli videos. but that's the general gist of the thermodynamic side of it. So, to sum it all up, the theory so far is that Amphoreus is a big simulated universe crafted partially with Aina's leftover power by Fuli based on the memories of Elydichna before Swarm. Fuli's endgame is to preserve the current Nanook by locking away the anti-Nanook in a cage, preventing the birth of the anti-Nanook. Thus, Amphoreus has been stuck in a day-night samsara until now, with the 13th Titan Cyrene scattered across the universe to prevent a successful Tang. In contrast, Aha's endgame is to change Nanook like how Nikator was changed by the antiparticle Nous. As such, the status quo on Amphoreus is going to change, because like how the masked fool Sparkle manipulated the Nameless on Gondola to go to Elydichna and return the memories to the particle half of the Self-Annihilator, March is back, and MEM is going to be collected again. In the end, the fate of the Golden Scapegoat depends on the answer to the last question. Is the future of the universe predetermined, or is it chaotic? And now you also know why Nous is also in this Amphoreus game. But why are Fuli and Aha so invested in the birth, or unbirth, of Nanook? What is Amphoreus really in terms of physics? How are the laws of thermodynamics represented in the world building of Honkai Star Rail? Please like, subscribe, and stay tuned to discover all the nooks and crannies of Honkai Star Rail world building.